to respect the game.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. Welcome to Respect the Game podcast, presented to you by OMB, our neutral voices link. Here we're talking about more than just the game. We're talking about mindset. We're talking about discipline. We're talking about growth. We're talking about goals, both on and off the court, on and off the field. My name is Taya Andrews, and I'm going to be your host tonight. I have amazing coaches here with me that are also going to be my co-hosts. Let's go ahead and introduce yourselves tonight.
Yes, I'm Coach Ayers.
Former Coach Bruce Stevens for over 30 years at both Harding and New Haven.
I'm Coach J.J. Foster, and I'm going to say, hey, girl, I'm impressed. You act like you was reading off a teleprompter. You did that. Hey, that's all right.
Yeah.
Hey, I can assure you there's no teleprompter over here. Just realness. All right. So tonight, our topic is going to be NCAA basketball, taking you to the 2025 women's basketball tournament. We had a great matchup. UConn, South Carolina, two great teams, two dominant forces, two great coaches. Two great teams that have good aspects that are going to be going into the WNBA this year. First, talking about Paige Bueckers, or should I say Paige Buckets, averaging 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3 steals in this NCAA tournament. I mean, what an absolute run. Talking about a legacy with that. Coach Stevens, what do you kind of think about, Paige's performance and with this legacy sealed and, kind of what this means to UConn in their 12th title?
Paige stepped her game up. She not only in that championship game, but in the games before that, she really brought it. And I was impressed with how she was able to. I watch UConn all year. As you can see, I'm sporting make sure you all know I got on my Yana Patterson representing Fort Wayne.
260.
All right. So I watched UConn all year. And, her and Fudd didn't get a chance to play with each other a lot, her, Fudd, and Strong. So once the tournament came and all three of them had a chance to play with each other, you could just see the chemistry. And what I really liked about Paige is she struggled with her shot in that championship game, but she did everything else, whatever it took to win.
Absolutely.
And I like to add, people forgot about Paige. Paige came on the scene. We've talked about this before, but Paige had a trajectory where she was going to be bigger than Caitlin Clark. Then she got hurt. She has some things. The other thing that I like her because she'll speak out on issues. She's not just a basketball player. She speaks out. She's not afraid to get into issues that people want to shy away from. Had she got her SPs and spoke out, I honestly think, she lost some endorsement deals and things behind that. People jumped off that bandwagon, but a heck of a talent and even a better person.
Absolutely. And, kind of with that legacy, in terms of that, a lot of people kind of doubted UConn this year, kind of looking at the tournament brackets. Not a lot of people picked UConn as the tournament winner, South Carolina being a dominant force, Paige Bueckers, Fudd definitely stepped up. You're talking about jump shots. Fudd definitely had amazing jump shots in that first half that definitely, gave UConn that elevated edge. But with that being said, it was Paige's game all day. Not only as an individual player, but also being a team player. Like I said, with those assists adding to that stat, line as well. She has great players on the perimeter. She has great players on the post that can catch the ball and that can also contribute to her game, which was what I think allowed her to be so successful in this tournament run.
Yeah.
Well, if you, Gino Orienta mentioned it earlier where he said that they needed Paige to shoot the ball more. She's an unselfish player. She wants to win. And when she did that, I think it was might have been the game against USC. She shot the ball over 20 times, ended up with over 30 points. And so she just did what she needed to do in order for them to win.
She definitely did what she was supposed to do.
Yeah.
As a leader, she did. She set back when she had to, and let the bigs do their job. And I just thought it was a good chemistry at the right time. The chemistry was just so strong, and it was just good basketball.
And that's what we mentioned, y'all mentioned Page, you mentioned Fudd, you mentioned Patterson. Nobody even said anything about Strauss.
Oh, we're gonna get to Strauss.
Who could have been?
That's coming next, JJ. So since you want to talk about Sarah Strong, we're talking about a dominant post, right? Yeah. I think this was a post that a lot of people counted out in this tournament. You looking across the board at a lot of these other teams, in the stat lines, she wasn't, comparative to them, she wasn't on that elevated level. Do you think, JJ, Sarah Strong proved herself as being a top dominant force post in this tournament?
Oh, I think with bells and whistles, yeah. Like I said, you're talking about somebody who could have been the MVP.
She should have been.
Yeah, but with everything that, like you led with, Paige having the legacy that she did, and that's what people want to put the cherry on top. Right. At the end of the day, that's who carried them. And Bruce alluded to it because not just Fudd being hurt, Strong, she was hurt. UConn never even had their full team all season. So that it was kind of fool's gold for people that didn't understand, how good UConn could be. And everybody thought, oh, they're going to fall off or they not this, they're not that. But, hey, all them girls healthy at once, they showed you what type of team they were.
Yeah, they came around at the right time.
Yeah. Hey, and I just want to give a shout out because, we've got some people that are on YouTube that's in and Facebook, and I just saw one question on there. My wife Tiffany Stevens, and she, she's talking about I picked UConn to win women's pool, and she did win in our tournament. So I just want to give her a shout out, and remember everybody to make sure you like, share, and subscribe on YouTube or on Facebook. I had to put that plug in a little bit earlier.
Absolutely.
To respect the game. But to jump on by what you said, Fudd is, we keep saying, is she the most dominant big? And I believe next year she'll move to a 3 or a 4, maybe a 4, like a power 4, because the big girl from Egypt, Al-Fadi or whatever, she did a heck of a job against the bigs, against Lauren Betts from UCLA. And she was only a freshman.
She proved herself, too, in this tournament.
She did. And what is she, about 6'5"?
Man, she's 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah, and the way Strong can step out and shoot the ball. And, as coaches, a lot of people look at the scoring part, but I looked at all the other things. So I think she was also because she was able to push Lauren Betts off of that block against UCLA. Yeah. And so Betts couldn't do what she usually do because when Betts gets close, it's over with. Yeah. And when they play USC, now, of course, the best talent in the country didn't get to play that, which is Juju, of course. Mm-hmm. So it might have been a different story. But the big USC is huge. And so they were able to still run them and cover the bigs inside. So I'm just excited, about women's basketball and what's set for next year. And after watching the draft, I can't wait for the WNBA season to start.
Well, how about Paige going number 1 in the WNBA draft? I mean, what do you think she's going to do for the team that she's currently on? Where did she go to? Dallas?
Yeah.
Dallas Wings?
Yeah.
Dallas Wings. Who they got over there as well? Angel Reese. Wait.
No,
not Angel Reese.
Angel in Chicago. I can't think of her name.
You just stumped the crew.
Yeah. I can't say her name, but the guard that's really good.
Yes.
I think she played at Notre Dame in her college career. But
they also have Taisha Harris.
Yeah.
That played at South Carolina. That played for the Connecticut Sun. She just got they.
How about this? There's a reason why they got the first pick.
Hey, there's a reason.
Yeah. So,
but, let's give a shout out to South Carolina.
Thank you.
Definitely.
They did a wonderful job as far as getting to, the championship game, making sure that, that they represented well. They just had a bad game in the championship.
Yes.
Well, also, Mike, to me, I think this is one of Dawn Staley's best coaching jobs she's ever done. Remember, they lost Ashley Watkins, at the beginning, back in January. That was the young lady that dunked on someone on the break, and she was, and, USC has been, South Carolina has been known for their bigs. Yeah. And so they didn't have that big play that they usually have. But if you got Ashley Watkins, you had Edwards, the freshman. So they're gonna be okay. They're losing some guards. Fo Wiley has decided to leave, but they did get the number 1 leading scorer in the nation, Latson from Florida State, to come in. So Don's going to be okay. I'm not losing any sleep on over South Carolina, they're going to be all right.
I'm gonna tell you, it's funny. You was talking about USC, and what we don't really understand, like up our way, USC is what you talking about. I was thinking to myself, which one? You know, I spent my time in South Carolina. USC is University of South Carolina. But to your point, Dawn did a heck of a job, and they didn't have that superstar,
Right.
you know, this year, and to make it back to that game, Dawn did do a heck of a job. And when you talk about the battle of two titans, Gino versus Dawn, you know,
Right.
before that game, I said, hey, the winners was ESPN and ABC for coverage of that game, because
definitely.
that's as big as it gets, men or women, them two going at it. And when you look at, we already talked about next year, look, UConn loaded, USC, again, she may have lost some, but she's bringing in players.
Right.
And her relationship that she has, we might be looking at them two again. But I think back to, you know, Gino and Pat Summitt.
You're right.
You know, now we got Gino and Dawn.
Right.
That speaks to Gino and his longevity. But again, to
Well, remember
Dawn,
when
great job.
with Gino, before he get over the hump, it was he couldn't beat Pat Summitt.
Correct.
You know,
That's
he couldn't
exactly
beat
right.
Tennessee, and so he finally got over that hump. And so I think Dawn has gotten over the hump.
Yeah.
But if we can, and heck, think about it, this was Gino's 40th year. You know, it was the anniversary of his 40th year. For him to win it, that was, you know, great for him also. But I think that's going to be a great rivalry for a few more years.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, kind of circling back to, you know, what you said, Coach Ayers, about, you know, it just not being a good game for South Carolina, and, you know, kind of tuning into what you said as a coaching. Great coaching, you know, season for Dawn Staley.
Yeah.
I just don't think South Carolina clicked at the right time. It was one of those games where things just weren't happening. The flow wasn't there, and those were things that they were used to. And unfortunately, because they weren't used to those events, they just didn't know how to adapt.
But let me ask you this question. UConn went to USC earlier and beat the brakes off of them at USC.
Yeah.
Broke their streak.
And it was 30 then also.
Yeah.
Correct. It was it was more. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was less. It was still a blowout this championship. That's what everybody
Right.
said. Because a couple people said, "Oh, UConn might win, but it ain't gonna be like that."
And
Them
it was
girls
like
came
that.
out, it was like
It was
that.
like that.
And I
That
think
was a
that game,
statement.
JJ, is what helped them for that championship game. You know, because remember they lost to USC earlier, Southern California, and they had lost a few games, and now we're like, okay, where is this? Ain't the UConn that we think they are? And then they had got beat by Notre Dame, and then they went to South Carolina and blew them out, and from there on, I don't think they lost another game, and the average margin had to be close to 15 to 20.
Yeah,
So,
it was
you know,
rolling.
yeah,
and
so
and that's funny. This whole season, though, you think about that, like you said, UConn went in there, dog South Carolina, didn't look back. Then you had a team like Notre Dame, who was number one and rocking and rolling. Then next thing you know, it's like they just fell off a cliff.
You're
Yes.
right.
They couldn't.
You're right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right.
And, you know, that's kind of, I think what resulted in, that transfer, over to TCU. And, kind of with Wiley leaving South Carolina, I'm kind of interested to see what, this transfer portal is looking like for these teams and where they're going to kind of land up, because TCU, even looking at Iowa, right, with Caitlin Clark in Iowa, Caitlin Clark was a absolute stud. We can't take that away. But she also had great players around her. You got to think this is still Division I basketball. This is the Big Ten. This is the big time of the big time. So even at, TCU with that addition, they're still going to be having good players over at TCU. And so, like I said, I'm just interested to see, maybe where Wiley ends up if she's maybe thinking that is kind of looking good in her horizon.
We ain't even talked about Kim Mulkey and LSU.
Exactly.
The fact that we can overlook them is saying a lot.
Yeah.
As far as women's.
Blanche on the move too, though.
Well, she's on the move in the hip hop scene.
She put her name in.
Wow.
So
It's so many different. They got a top 10, top 15. Transfers and. Your girl from UCLA.
Which one, Lauren Betts?
Becker.
No, Lauren Betts, the 6'7" girl.
Yep.
Yeah.
she got her sister coming
Her
in
sister coming in.
next year.
No. So the junior, she been at 3 different schools. This will be her 3rd school that she be going to. Becker.
No, you talking about somebody else.
Yeah.
This might just be something we have to look up
there
on
was
Google
somebody at
later.
now. Van Leaf that was at TCU.
Yeah,
She was at 3 different schools. She just got what was she like? The
Sedona
number
Prince
8
was
pick?
at 3 different schools.
I was saying, yeah,
Prince.
That's another topic.
Yes, Sedona.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, though, that's funny though, because again, in the men's side, we see all that moving with the portal.
Yep.
On the girls' side, we see movement, but it's nowhere near that.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things, Gino talked about why he's been so successful. Yeah, like he said, he's getting the girls, they're staying.
Yes,
He
you're right.
ain't worried about them going anywhere else.
You're right.
And in the girls' side, yeah, we're getting a couple of superstars, some difference makers that are going, but for the most part, people have their teams, their nucleus. On that men's side, you got guys that playing in the Final Four, and everybody leaving. Think about that Florida team. Florida, what was that? Florida Gulf Coast or
Yeah.
All them cats are all on different teams. I mean,
Well, one dude transferred it while he was still playing in the tournament.
In the locker room.
I mean, hey, they got broadcasting live on TV. Everybody tying up their shoes. He got his hold on, coach. Let me go ahead make this little announcement real quick. Boom, game started. Coach seeing the news after the game. I mean, what?
Crazy.
That's crazy. I mean, what a transfer portal. I mean, even looking back to when I was in college, back in the 2016 to 2020 season, and even looking even further back, probably when you guys were in college, things how the transfer portal has changed along the way.
transfer portal. What are you talking about? What no portal? What are you talking about?
You wanted to transfer.
hey,
you had to
Oh,
do
you know
that.
what? That's
you
showing
talking about Star Trek?
that's showing the age gap right there. I'm sitting with a couple old heads.
Beat me up, Scotty. That's the portal we
In
know.
my day, we had transfers, okay? In their days, they had a spaceship to Star Trek and never coming back, okay, apparently.
But to be honest about that, we was committed.
Yeah.
We stayed
That's the
course.
point, is the commitment.
Yeah, we stayed the course.
I'm with you on that, Mike. We were committed, but hey, if they was throwing out the cash,
Come on,
think about it. If they was throwing out what they're throwing now, hey, it would have been a lot of people leaving because think back when guys, heck, I remember when I was in college and playing sports. Hey, when I got back, if the cafeteria or something was closed, you didn't eat.
Yeah.
All right. On Sundays, you got one meal, and then you went out and you fended for yourself as far as trying to get things. And I'm going to go way back. I remember one time when they told us at the dorm, hey, we've got something new. They're going to start delivering pizzas. This place called Domino's. What? Delivering pizzas? So
Best thing since sliced bread.
yeah.
Hey, I've had deliveries since before I could walk, man. they was delivering baby bottles to the door.
So, but yeah, the portal has changed a lot of things, and for the better, I think, in a sense, maybe not so much for the game, but for the athlete.
Absolutely.
It made the game better. If you think about this tournament again on the guys' side,
definitely.
I mean, it makes the talent better.
Yeah.
So
And then you don't have people that jump ship as far as going to the NBA so soon.
correct, yeah,
Yep. They
Why
stick
not?
around.
I mean, it's even to the point where like people were talking about Cooper Flag. Is he gonna stay? Is he gonna go back? I mean, before it's a no-brainer. He's going to the league. Now, I mean, he's making $2 million in college with his buddies at 18, a fresh 18 years old. I mean, could you knock him? I'm gonna stick around, get this extra $2 million, still hang around where I got my support group and all my buddies. Because when you go to the league, what people don't understand, that's isolated. You grown. That's like when you leave to go to work, you're leaving your house, going to the gym, performing that job. It ain't no hanging out. College, you go to practice. Hey, I leave practice. I'm hanging out, kicking with my buddies. We eating. We doing everything together. There, hey, you playing with grown men. They going home, spending time with their kids, their wives, their families. So it's something to think about.
The argument about Cooper Flag is, he gonna be the number 1 pick, and everybody want to be the number 1 pick. So
He gonna be the number 1 pick if he come out this year, next year,
Man,
3 years.
he gonna be
the number 1 pick. That's
hard.
I'm just saying that they was talking about he's leaving this year just because he's going to be a guaranteed number 1.
But here's the
it's
point.
not guaranteed.
Guaranteed number
he's
1.
He's going to be guaranteed next year.
Guaranteed
If
number
he
1,
get
just
hurt.
like I'm talking about
Domination.
Paige and we
Come
talking
on,
about
man.
Dallas and y'all couldn't name nobody. So am I guaranteed number 1 to go play for this team that ain't gonna be no good? If I'm waiting, he holds the cards. That's the point. He number 1 regardless when he come out.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, if he gets hurt, he's not going to be number 1. He's not hurt now, so he's gonna look at all them.
Well,
them
they got
options.
things called insurance policies, and like I said,
Lloyd's
$2
of
million.
London-
Lloyd's
Lloyd's
of
of
London,
London, right?
and he make it too. I mean, so
Yeah.
at the end of the day,
I personally say
Yeah.
I wish he stay in the whole 4 years and make college.
I'm just saying, I don't think he
Right.
is, but
I
I'm
don't-
just saying
yeah, I don't
the
think
thought
he is.
process has changed. That's how
Yeah.
the thought process has changed.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point to jump back on, say, about the women's side. You look at Olivia Miles, who decided not to go to the draft, and she got into the portal. For women, there's no reason to really go to the WNBA.
They making
Yeah,
more
'cause
bread.
you're making more money staying in college.
Absolutely.
Look
These
at
NIL
look at
deals.
Flage.
Yeah.
Look at Juju. Look at Paige. You look all over the commercials and you see them. So Olivia Miles, I think that was a good move by her, because she's still going to be in the top 5 even next year. Now, next year there's a stronger class if they decide to come out. The one thing you don't see in the women's game that you see in the men's, you don't see sophomores coming out early, or people leaving after a freshman year, or juniors. But again, that goes back to.
But I think they got a rule in WNBA too, though. They make you stay.
They have that.
Yeah.
Is it how long?
I'm not sure, but I
Okay.
know you had to stay extra. Yeah, because you're right.
Well, I
At a certain
think
age.
in kind of terms of, the players staying and everything like that, JJ, kind of like you said earlier, Connecticut keeps the kids, right? He has the kids. He has the kids that stays, and that's what makes UConn such a dominant force in women's basketball. Looking at, Gino, Don Staley in this matchup, kind of talking about tuning in, to both of their legacies and, what this game kind of meant for their legacy. What my coach Ayers, what are you thinking, kind of in terms of, what this looks like for the coaching for them, how it looks like for, incoming, classes and the transfer portal as well with these, great dominant coaches.
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, South Carolina got the better hand. They got some good transfers coming in, and they got their class, still coming back, from this year. It's not like they lost a lot of people. Just the one point guard. And she was wishy-washy. She
Up
had
and
a
down.
good
Talking
game.
about Paul Wiley?
Yeah.
Well, Don
Yeah.
Staley had to tune in with
Yeah.
her a lot,
Yeah.
throughout
Yeah.
the season and kind of get her back to grip with
Yeah.
things, because she's a player that kind of wants to go off sometimes and
do
kind
her
of do her
thing.
own thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And what do you think about, Don Staley, and, do you think that was a good fit? Do you think that, maybe the coaching style could have helped her a little bit, if she would have changed it up? What are you kind of thinking in terms of, that relationship?
She did what she's supposed to do as a coach. She ran the ship, and you're
Yep.
going to do it her way.
Absolutely.
She was not letting them, even the freshman that she had, the one center, she
Yeah,
set her
Edwards.
down.
Yeah. Right.
You're not going to do what I tell you to do. This is what we're going to be doing, So I think she's a great coach for her team. She's a go-getter, and she makes sure that
a player's coach.
Yeah.
she definitely
A great
and they love
inspiration.
her.
Right. She's a great mentor also. I
Yeah.
mean,
Hey, and I'm gonna tell y'all this, not to cut you off, but hey,
Mm-hmm.
coaching style be dang. Let's talk about the coach's style. Gucci down, Louis Vuitton.
Hey,
y'all
Don
ain't
Staley,
playing
if you
with
hearing
it.
this right now,
Hey,
I
with it.
need that outfit. I mean, she had pearls on that thing. I mean, it's got to be a couple thousand, but hey,
couple
go.
of thousand. But I think it might have been more than
And
that.
then
but-
on
Don, let me go ahead and get that.
On the real, what I like about her too, she fresh dressed with all that, but then think about it. She is a sincere person. That little girl who's got the terminal illness,
Oh, right.
She wears her
bracelets
braids and
and
all
necklaces.
that
Yeah, she gives her almost
religiously.
every game.
She
Yeah.
fresh, she G'd up with them $1,000 outfits, but she had a little girl's jewelry on. And she goes and speaks out, and then she's a mentor to other black coaches that comes up. People don't even know about that stuff, but she reaches out, she goes above and beyond. That's the thing.
Every time she wins a championship, she sends all the black coaches, the women coaches, part of the net.
Correct.
That's
And
amazing.
that's crazy how they get inspired from her.
Yes.
And she don't want no fanfare behind it.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
just what
She's
do.
for the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
She's
she
a coach
does.
that truly does it for the players and for the culture of the game of basketball. And that's what's so important about this show is respecting the game, and how these coaches and how these players and how all of these situations that they kind of go through contribute to that love of whatever sport that they're in. And I truly think that in terms of South Carolina and Dawn Staley as a coach, Gino as a coach, they do it for the love of the game of basketball, and that's what attracts players to these programs. Even looking at, like you mentioned too, LSU, Kim Mulkey, even though she has her crazy outfits and she might have her crazy outbursts and stomping moments, those are the type of coaches that are truly passionate about the game of basketball. And what better coaches to play for than someone who loves the game as a player and who loves it as a coach.
We've been fact checked right quick. Hold on, we brought up something. We got thank you, Tiff Stevens. She done looked it up for us. Girls can enter the draft their junior year as long as they're 22 years old. So
okay,
my family stay on top of things.
Got you. But go ahead.
Sedona's about 29 years old and she ain't get drafted. So
we ain't even gonna.
We ain't even gonna go to that.
Get drafted, but
we just gonna just skip past that.
But you mentioned something about Dawn Staley and Gino also. But here's the thing, a coach is really good when their former players come back.
Yeah.
And when you look at the UConn game, when you look behind the bench, you got almost 10 Hall of Famers from UConn sitting behind the bench, still rooting on that team. You look at South Carolina and, all of the play, Asia Wilson. She comes to the practices. She gives them shoes. That's just a testament to, and they always mention that it isn't as much about what they learn from the game, but what they learn from life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
that's
all
a
of
great
us,
point,
all
Coach.
of us sitting here, I think that's why you do it.
Yeah.
Yes,
but go ahead,
absolutely.
Mike. I stepped on Mike. Mike had a point.
No, that's fine. No, I just want to say, I just think like Gino and Dawn, and you can hear it in the players when they talking, how they love their coaches, and they would do anything for them. So, we all saying the same thing about how great these coaches are, and how mentors, they're great mentors and stuff, man. I just think it's a beautiful thing for, to have coaches like that, because you get some coaches that just don't, they want to win.
Yeah.
And they do more than just win.
And you know what? We've all been there. You can't be a great coach without great assistants.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the staff and everybody there. So just a shout out to all of them for what they've done for the program. And I'm just so excited about the whole game. And I would be remiss if I don't mention, I know you guys watched the draft. And speaking about outfits, but I can't wait for that young lady that's 19-year-old, Dominique Milgano from France. They say she's going to be the female Wemby.
Well, I know you will. Hey, we'll talk about female Wemby. I know you kind of want to talk about, everything with that, but, kind of wrapping everything up, talking about, Paige, kind of sealing that legacy. Like I said, 19 points per game. I mean, what a performance that she showed. And, I know a lot of kids look up to her. We talked about Juju. We talked about Paige. Those are kids. That's a player that kids want to play like, Sarah Strong on the post, showing these kids that you can play on the perimeter, right? You talked about her being a 4 potentially. Being a 4 or 5 is always an option, not just being limited to that block. And also, that legacy with Gino and Dawn and all these other great coaches in the NCAA that, attract these kids and, like I said, want to, really build up the game of basketball. And I think that's what's, most important, in this entire thing is, like I said before, respecting the game, loving the game, having people around you who have the same mindset, who have the same goals. And that's what's going to allow people to prosper. We talked about the NBA, the WNBA, all of those things, along the way is going to get you to that stage. So, thank you viewers for tuning in with us tonight. It's been an amazing show. It's been a first show. Hope to have more. Hope to have amazing shows. You guys all have a blessed night. Mike, what do we say before we leave the set?
Always protect your mind.
All right.